Yeah, I thought I'd just do a short introduction to tell you why this particular topic, why this focus for this event. So everyone's talking about 5G. There's just such a lot of hype about it. I think there's a misconception that it's all going to be at millimetre waves, which you probably know that it isn't. But where do millimetre waves fit in? 5G is not just one technology. It really hinges on all the use cases, and some of those have not even been thought of yet, but they're broadly grouped into 4 areas. Initially it was only going to be 3 areas, but the 4th one has been emerging. The one that is obvious is that there's a constant need for higher data rate communications, video streaming, voice over IP, all sorts of video gaming is a particular one that is that has a lot of requirements for bandwidth and low latency. Massive machine type communications, otherwise known as the IoT, is already with us, in fact, with 4G, but 4G has nothing like the capacity to connect everything that is wanted. So that is a major use case for 5G. Mission critical, which includes obviously autonomous cars and remote surgery, and anything where you need absolutely instant response, and latency is the driving force on that. The 4th one, which is emerging, is that once we start talking about headline speeds that are higher than we can get from fibre, fibre to the home, then fixed broadband access, last mile technology, is an obvious application for 5G as well, and much easier than actually putting in fibre. The targets for 5G are data rates in excess of 10 gigabits per second, latency below 1 millisecond, 1,000 times the capacity that we have with 4G, and much more energy efficiency as well, because obviously if you're sending more data, there isn't an infinite amount of energy available to run it, and we want to be a lot greener. So the target is that it's a reduction by 1,000-fold in the energy energy per transported bit. So that's a 1,000 times increase in efficiency. Just looking at where we are at the moment, it seems funny to put up LTE in a 5G conference, but actually 5G is not a brand new technology. Some of it is building on LTE. LTE's been with us in one form or another since 2010. Release 10 was frozen in 2011. All of these features have been continuously added, and release 14 has only recently been frozen. Sorry, it's not going to be frozen until next month, but it's almost there. And all of these things, release 14 is actually working towards 5G. And then beyond this summer, this is clearly a watershed. Beyond this summer, we're working towards 5G with release 15, and these are actually 5G features. And in parallel, we're developing what's called 5G New Radio. There's the non-standalone version that builds on the framework of LTE, which is why I showed the slide of what LTE already does. And there are 2 flavours of that. There's non-standalone builds on LTE, and standalone is a new framework. There's also the architecture that goes with it, the base stations, etc. So all of those are 3GPP activities going forward from now, and intended to be frozen in September 2018. Key to this is introducing some new spectrum. LTE bands going up to 6 gigahertz at the moment, and there will be some of the standalone features in that spectrum as well. But if we're going to be able to get the bandwidth for this high data capacity, we do need some new frequencies, and that's where millimetre waves come in. new spectrum bands opening up, lots of them under discussion. You'll hear in the presentations later which bands are being talked about. There are some challenges, millimetre waves. Now, I'm showing this graph, which actually is a very historical one. It's been around for a long time, and I understand actually that some of these measurements were made in the Arizona desert, and actually the figures in this country are much, much worse. But this is quite well known that there are water vapour and oxygen resonances where it's difficult to transmit millimetre waves. It also suffers from rain attenuation, and if you were out last night you'll understand that could be a severe problem. And it's also non-line of sight. You get blocking by foliage and other obstructions. You also get diffraction, fading effects and scattering. So there will be papers today concentrating on non-line of sight capability. So why millimetre waves? Because everything gets more difficult above 24 gigahertz. Semiconductor processes are more difficult, designs are more difficult, propagation losses, as I've just mentioned, real challenge, and system designs also very challenging. So why? Well, there's just one word: bandwidth. It's the best way to achieve the peak data rates and the wider channel bandwidths that we need. So going back to what Oren was saying, how can Intelligent UK help? Intelligent UK offers a flexible support service, and that includes training to fill in gaps in people's knowledge, find out more about millimetre waves, how you can transfer your RF skills to millimetre wave frequencies. Also, obviously, test equipment rental. There'll be new equipment requirements for these frequencies, and Oren did a great job of telling you what is available, so I'm not going to elaborate on that. And they can also help you to purchase equipment economically as well.